Welcome. This is the Boston Globe Juneteenth Film Festival. And I am Julian Bimbo, just here to hang out and talk about the film, the series actually, City on Our Back. And we have Cheney, the director, and Coach Carl Cadet here to kind of walk us through the process, tell us how the story came together, how all of it came together, which should be fun. And I'm looking forward to it. So let's get into it. Cheney, Carl, what's going on?
Hey, how's it going?
Alive and kicking. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
Doing well. Welcome to the virtual film festival. Let me start my video so everybody can see me and I can act like I actually know how Zoom works. Hello. What is going on, everybody? Dude, it's a pleasure. I know we just talked yesterday, but it's good to see you again. Let's get right into it. For everybody who doesn't know, man, explain to the people what Tenfold is, what Tenfold Prep is, and how the idea came together, your backstory, and what you wanted to accomplish with it, and then also just how you and Cheney linked up, and sort of we talked about it yesterday, the idea of visual representation, but why it was important and what struck you about the opportunity to use this as not just a chance to show the kids in the program, but to provide some visual representation. Not that that's a mouthful or anything.
Sorry, I lost you in the beginning of that question, Julian. For some reason, I think my internet was unstable. Can you just shoot the first part again?
Nice, of course. All right.
So are we having?
Yeah, it seems like Julian's frozen. But
Okay.
The first part of the question was just talking about what Tenfold Prep is, kind of your background with the story, and then we could talk about how we got together.
Sure. Tenfold Prep, it's a program that we started up to help serve the youth in and around the inner cities of Boston, just to try to give kids an opportunity to express themselves through sport and, kind of, take their talents and, put it on, showcase the abilities of a lot of the students and kind of show them what life is like on and off the field. We took the opportunity during COVID, to try to put some programming together to keep kids active. And we ended up creating this doc and connecting with Cheney to try to tell some of the stories. So, because obviously, when people think of high school athletes or sometimes very talented high school athletes, they don't really know the full story behind it. So we wanted to be able to try to tell that story. And Cheney was a key piece in doing that.
Yeah. Julian, you're muted.
It wouldn't be a Zoom if I wasn't glitching or I wasn't muted. So I think this is going perfect so far. But yeah, no, just talk about how you guys actually linked up and what you saw in the opportunity.
Yeah, sure. So there was a mutual friend that I had who kind of connected me to Cheney. And Cheney, if you want to elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah. So me and Carl met a while ago and we were doing some videos, but it was cool because our missions kind of matched each other. Carl was definitely looking for a way to give more exposure to his athletes, well-deserved exposure that they needed. And my organization, like CTD Productions, we have a saying that everyone has a story, and our goal is really to uplift voices, especially those in the Black and Brown community. And it was a great opportunity because he wanted exposure. I wanted to really tell the story and get deeper into the athlete's life. I would even say that I'm not even necessarily a big sports fan, but I just love the stories and hearing people's experiences and things like that. So, our missions coming together and kind of came up with the idea of doing a doc. And, we started off with season 1, which was kind of just like really documenting the story and kind of filming everything that happened on our first trip to Vegas. And this season 2 one that everyone's watching, this one was really to fill in the gaps of the information more about the program itself, a little bit more about Carl's story, and just give people a better insight of what's going on with Tenfold and what these students are going through.
It's funny you say, I wouldn't even say I'm into sports that much, because even when you start diving into the story, it's obviously about football, and you see the competition and you see the work they put in, but it's more about like, can you get here on time for a 10 a.m. meeting? Have you taken a flight before? Can you be responsible? Do you know what's in front of you? Do you know all the things that you need to take care of and knock off? And these are young people who have to learn these things. And Carl, we were talking about it. It was like, it was important to you to make sure that like these kids knew what was in front of them. And can you explain, just from your background, why that is important and how it was captured in the series?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a key thing. That's like kind of like you mentioned. We emphasize to the kids to have these great life skills. When we want transferable skills that transfer to success on the field and transfer to success off the field, whether it's a business career or kind of, in school. You want to make sure you're putting yourself in the best position and you're prepared. So that means arriving on time and early, and that means being punctual, being concise, and just whatever it is that you're doing, you want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward. So we want to give kids the, those preparation skills for life as well as football. I think it's really important for us that being a program in a position of mentorship and leadership, that these kids leave here with something more than just a golden trophy at the end of the day. We want to prepare these guys for life.
I think we were talking a little bit about it yesterday too, but I mean, it says it in the title, obviously, but just sitting on the back, it's a lot of weight, right? And it's something that is like synonymous with Boston, whether it's like Boston football, Boston basketball, Boston music culture, Boston whatever. It's like we want to put the city on the map. But just can you talk about just kind of the reputation that Boston has, and when you're taking kids from this area and trying to get them into a tournament in Vegas and put them on, just what comes with it and what they're trying to do,
Yeah, sure. I mean, obviously, we traveled the country, we went to Vegas, we went to Orlando, and believe it or not, the reputation for Boston is that we don't really have much to offer. A lot of people don't know about the culture here in Boston and the diversity that is here. So we wanted to put that on the forefront and say, hey, there is nice things in Boston, and there is great players in Boston, and there is, our kids are multi-talented, and we wanted to be able to showcase that and put that on the platform as well. And that's kind of why they took the notion, to put the city on their back, because they felt like they wanted to be a great representation of Boston, not just kind of stereotypical of what people may think of Boston when Boston comes up. Because as you can see in the doc, there was a lot of kids who had they didn't even know Boston was in Massachusetts.
Right. Boston.
Yeah, they were like, Boston, like, where's Boston? You guys play football there? Like, there's Black people in Boston, and it's a real thing. You know what I mean? And unfortunately, with today's time, we're trying to fight those stereotypes. So we want to just be able to showcase that there's a lot of positive things in Boston as well, in the Black community.
And Chaney, for you, I mean, that comes down to exposure, right? But as a storyteller, how important is it for you when you're telling the story to make sure you kind of capture them fully? Like, they're football players, but they have lives and parents and a lot of different things, a lot of different moving parts. And how do you get them to open up? How do you pull that out? And how do you make sure you package it in a way that is compelling, but also true to who they are?
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of like the big goal behind it, right? Is like, we've all seen a bunch of highlight videos and things like that. And, me, especially not being the biggest sports fan, it's like, I want to know about this kid. I want to know, like, what he's into, what his future goals look like, and things like that. And it's funny you mentioned that too. That's kind of like one thing that was like a realization that I had when I was putting this together, was the responsibility that you have. Like, initially it was kind of just like, oh, I'm going to document this, put together, it's going to be a great video. But once you kind of sit down and you have these interviews and you're hearing about, like, certain losses in the family or certain struggles and things that they were going through, like, the responsibility starts to hit you, and you're really like, you get emotionally connected as well. And so just being able to tell it accurately and precisely was definitely one of the biggest goals for me. And, you know, especially being part of the Black and Brown community, we don't have the same leeway that some other communities might have, where something could be misrepresented and all of a sudden this person has a bad reputation, or he's looked at as this or that. So the responsibility of making sure that it was accurate and telling a good story in a good light, and make sure everybody looks like, you know, as amazing as they are as people, was definitely a big part. And I think part of the interview questions and getting the questions right was, I think, a collaboration with Carl. All the interviews you see, me and Carl are actually, and my partner, Michaela, are behind the scenes, like sitting there coaching them, you know, making sure that they feel comfortable. If we can get the parent into the room, and like, you know, Carl having a close relationship with them, and us being able to kind of like make sure they feel comfortable and get that situation together was good. And also, just another tangent too is it was a great experience because like we got to learn a lot about the athletes. I remember there was one situation where Jaden Skeet, he's a player, and we were at his house and we went to pick up this instrument. I believe it was a bass.
Bass,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, both Carl and I were like, we thought initially he was joking. We were like, oh, he's about to mess around with us. And he actually started playing it. And me and Carl were like taken back. I almost like didn't record because I was like so taken back. I was like, oh, he knows how to play instruments. He's not just a football player. And I think like that situation and making that like people feel comfortable, building the right situation, and getting those detailed stories is kind of like what it was about. Learning more about these kids, that they're not just, you know, athletes and things like that.
I think that's part of it too, is like the backgrounds and the surprises, right? You got kids from like Hyde Park, right? But then you also have kids from like Lynn, you know what I mean? And you like, it could be easy to say like, oh, these are all Black kids from the same place, but it's like these are two completely different places and two completely different backgrounds. For you as a coach, you obviously know all the personality, but when you're, you know, how do you manage them all, and how do you understand all where they all come from? And then as a storyteller, you know, how do you make sure that, you know, the line that we all know, the experience is not a monolith. You know what I mean? These are all different kids in different circumstances, you know?
Yeah, I think just to kind of speak to in terms of managing them all, we've been really fortunate to just try to create a culture that's inclusive, and we try to be respectful to everybody, no matter where they're from, who they are, what their circumstances, whether they have $1 million or whether they have 2 nickels. We treat everybody the same. And then I think that kind of creates a culture where, you know, there's the respect in the room. And then, you know, you just try to get to know everybody on a one-on-one level. And you start to understand, you know, some of their actions, and you kind of handle it accordingly. You know, I guess there's a saying that we use that everybody's treated fair, but never everybody isn't treated equally in a sense. We treat everybody fair, but everybody's not going to get the same type of leeway, because this kid may have a situation at home that he's dealing with, and that may allow him, you know what I mean, to a little bit more leniency as opposed to another kid. But at the end of the day, we still try to hold them to a higher standard. Overall, the kids are great, and they bought in, and, you know, they love the process. And what made it easy is we were all here together for the same goal, for the same reason. You know what I mean? So they were all motivated young men. Unfortunately, we didn't have any women on this team yet, but we are actively looking.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to be inclusive of women as well. So they were all really active and motivated, all for the same purpose and the same goal. So that made it a lot easier to be able to manage some of the attitudes and some of the stuff, because as you can tell, man, dealing with teenagers is not always the easiest thing, especially with some of them that have egos, and some of them, there's a trust factor there. So you got to just really, when it boils down to it, you just got to really get to know them on a one-on-one level and build that trust.
And just to touch on what your question is, like from the video side, I think the biggest thing was really to like immerse myself in it, not just come in and like, I'm the director and you do this and you do this, is to really like be a part of the team, like, you know, fly with them. I'm in the buses with them to the games, really just trying to like be a fly in the wall and capture as many moments as I can, so that I'm actually learning their personalities while I'm documenting just everything that's going on. And then also just working really close with like whoever you're collaborating with. In this case was Tenfold Prep. Like we talk to each other maybe every night, like weeks up into the event, and then the following months after, like talking about, you know, different situations and different athletes, and like just being a part of the team and being a part of everything that's going on and learning like actually what's happening before you kind of put together the story and you know, tell it.
I think I think we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but I was curious about just like one from the from the side of just kind of putting it together in your head and envisioning what it looks like. You know, there's some templates, right? Like there's we were talking about Last Chance U, and I think the other one I was thinking of was Friday Night Hikes. Actually, like that was one of the first ones where I looked and I was like, they are making Pop Warner football look awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah. But it became like a way to craft a narrative around the sport that goes beyond just like, and then they won their championship. You know what I mean? So how much do those things kind of influence your brand of storytelling and what you thought could be done when you embarked on the project, Cheney? And then Carl, for you, like film, I'm assuming isn't you aren't is not foreign to a coach, right? Like you got to watch film all day, send film out to colleges. And now they got Huddle and Instagram, and it's a highlight film every day. So like, how did you look at it and say like, this is a different way that we can kind of present and in theory, like, you know, brand, you know, ourselves and our kids?
Yeah, so I think to answer your question, a lot of this was kind of like organic. Like you can't necessarily plan everything that happens because obviously you don't know if they're going to win, how they're going to perform, and things like that. So a lot of like the storytelling and putting it together happens after the fact, where I'm going through like hours and hours and hours of footage just to kind of like piece together the story, knowing what happens at the end. But like it is tough. Really, the only things that we could plan were the interviews prior, and just kind of getting that, and then going into the trip, just thinking about those interviews and kind of relating to the story. But at the end of the day, yeah, it's just really about being organic, being flexible, and then the following months after is just, you know, really working to put together like a cohesive story and piecing it together. Just flexible.
Yeah, and just I think you hit the nail on the head, Julian. You're talking about the film aspect of, you know, the sports industry in the world today with media and social media and all that going on. And I think that we necessarily came into this not with the idea of, hey, you know, let's use this as exposure for tenfold. It was like, hey, let's create a platform for these young men to be able to have a voice. And that was the, you know, the genuine organic behind it. It was like, you know, we have these great kids and they're having trouble getting exposure, and it's COVID. They lost their football season. They don't know what they're going to do. It's like, all right, let's rally up and, you know, let's give them something to be proud about. Let's let their voices be heard, and let's show some of these other coaches that there are more to players than just what you see on the field, right? And if you take a chance and get to know some of these kids, you can really have an impact on some of their lives. And I think that obviously this doc has that. Win, lose, or draw, they'll have this to draw back on, this experience with their friends for the rest of their lives. And it was a great project to be a part of, and you know, I'm sure that they enjoy it.
I feel like I know it's 2021 because I almost forgot there was a pandemic. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, like everybody's outside again.
Right.
But let's start there, man. Like, what was it like just kind of getting through this process during COVID, you know?
Like anything else, man, it was incredibly difficult. So many guidelines, restrictions, trying to be able to practice, trying to be able to travel. Um, it wasn't easy. And, you know, we had a lot of parental support, and our staff at Tenfold was amazing in terms of, you know, being flexible, because there was a lot of times where we had things planned and we had to change on the fly, and we had to be able to pivot. And you can't do that without a great team behind you. So, you know, our board at Tenfold, they're amazing, and, you know, they support the kids 150%. A lot of them don't even have kids in the program at this level, and they're just here because they believe in these young men and they believe in the program. So, I mean, during COVID, I mean, Cheney, I know you can talk a little bit about your experience with it, but it was scary as well, you know, because you don't know what to expect. You're flying across the country in the middle of a you know, pretty much quarantine. These kids are still in school, so there was a lot of variables and a lot of hurdles that we had to cross to make this happen. And you know, with a lot of great people and a lot of great support, we were able to do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cheney. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say similar to what Carl said. It was definitely scary. I would consider myself a pretty anxious person, especially when COVID came out. I was like, I'm not going outside for anything. But Carl hit me up and he was like, listen, we have this great opportunity to do like a documentary and tell the stories. It kind of was just like, all right, I'm gonna wear my 2 masks. I'm just gonna do what we got to do because it's like it was just such an amazing opportunity and such an amazing experience that it just had to be done in my eyes. That's why.
I laugh. I don't think we were talking about this a little bit yesterday too. In the Instagram, TikTok era, I don't think it was hard to get kids adjusted to the camera at all. But can you walk us a little bit through that process and just kind of getting them acclimated to with the having cameras around all the time, and you know, some of them look like they were born for it. Now, I will say that they had the touchdown celebration, but it was fun. It all felt pretty cool.
I think it was an awesome experience. I mean, just from my point of view, because like I don't work with them on a daily basis, but to be able to work with a group of kids that are so comfortable with the camera is definitely was a bonus. I think the interviews and things like that is definitely different because I think they've had a lot of highlight videos and things like that. But the sit down interviews, you know, some kids were definitely made for the camera. Some kids like needed a little bit of extra, like just coaching and things like that. But like you could see like they're stars, and when the video camera was out, they knew exactly what they had to do, and it was just a great opportunity just to like be behind there.
Yeah, and Cheney did an amazing job just capturing the personalities of some of these kids. Um, and kind of just being, like he said, being that fly on the wall, and obviously getting to know the kids. So he did a really good job in capturing the personalities of the kids, and like right now locally, a lot of these kids that were part of this documentaries, they're like celebrities or like superstars. You know,
Yeah,
they go to the local corner store, they go to the park, and all the kids are recognizing them and pointing them out. And recently, we went to a tournament in DC, and we got there, and like a couple of other teams were approaching us, like, "Hey, where's this kid? Where's that kid? You know, you guys were on YouTube," and you know that was part of the goal was to create some of that exposure. But I think that it kind of took a mind of its own.
that's pretty cool. I think obviously season 2, like you said, filled in some of the gaps. But what are the expectations? What can you even look ahead to see? You know, where else you can take it?
Yeah, I think me and Carl have been in conversation about that now. Just like, you know, again, it's like these are 15 to 20-minute episodes. You know, we weren't even able to feature all the kids, and even the kids that we did feature, they're so dynamic that there's so much more to tell. I know we've been thinking about potentially doing some more maybe Boston local things, putting more spot, because really the goal is to bring attention to Boston and bring attention to the athletes in Boston so that they can be recognized on a platform with a lot of other people in like Florida and other places. So just continuing to be creative and put together series. And we actually have a episode that we just put out recently, which was them at a training facility here in Massachusetts. And so, you know, the title of that one was Always Get Better. And it's kind of just like what our view is for this is we're always going to get better. The production's going to get bigger. The interviews are going to get deeper. And we just want to, you know, keep doing the work because it was fun and it was good for everybody. So I don't know if anything else.
Feel free to chime in, Carl.
Yeah, yep. And I guess what's next for us is having a greater impact. I think this was just the beginning, and we're just scratching the surface of what we really can do in the lives that we can touch. So we're trying to grow every day, and we're trying to build the program up so that we can have more of an impact on as many kids as we can, and obviously, you know, bring a greater light to Boston and to obviously Cheney, man. Because to be honest with you, when we came into this, or I came into it, I had a kind of an idea and, you know, kind of a vision. And the fact that he was able to bring it to life the way he does and his storytelling skills, it's really unbelievable, man, to be able to work together with him. And you know, he's very professional, and it's just been a great overall experience. So I'm happy that obviously as two separate minorities kind of own businesses that we were able to work together to create a project that has been so impactful and that has been clean and professional. So, you know, I think that it's just an example. So for some of these kids to be able to follow as well, that, you know, the notion that, you know, us as Black minorities can't work together to achieve a goal is not always correct. So we did something really, really powerful.
We mentioned this too, and I think I'll get the Q&As in a second, but we mentioned this too, that uh, Terrence Clark obviously passed away recently, and man, everybody thought he was the next one. He was on his way up. You know what I mean? But one of the striking things about him was that the way the city and the young people rallied around him, right? Whether it was because, like you said, they already knew him from social media, they followed him for years or whatever. Um, one, and he had the same mission, right, which was to put Boston on the map. One, why do you guys think that's so important? Not just for people who've gone through it already, but young people who are coming through it now. That when they come up, they're carrying that with them. And then two, how powerful is it that you have these kind of platforms, these kind of storytelling abilities to kind of be seen and do what you want to do in terms of making the city known for something that maybe it should probably be known more for, but is it?
Yeah, I think I mean, like individuals like Terrence Clark and things like that, it kind of shows that like you can make an impact in your city. You can be from Boston, you could be from a community that might not be as shined upon, and you really can do it. And I think that's a great example of giving inspiration to the kids to be able to, like, you don't have to be in New York, you don't have to be in California, you don't have to be in Florida to do something major and do something big for your city and represent. And for the platform side of things, I think, since everything is technology and everything, like we living in a new day and age, and we have access to this type of media. I mean, back in the day, to do like a full length documentary or anything like that, you would have to be a major production studio and you work with Hollywood and all that stuff. But nowadays, you can do it. You can put something together and put a great piece of work that people are going to appreciate. So I think just a message to everybody is just leverage those platforms, no matter where you're from, and just keep putting it on for your city, because you can really do anything.
Yeah, and just to tap into that as well, with like to touch on the Terrence Clark thing, it's like he was just one person. It doesn't take much. One person can have such a strong impact, and it only takes one person to start something, and everybody else picks up the trend and follow with it. And again, I think it's important for Boston to have that platform, because I mean, there's obviously a sense of pride there, being from Boston and growing up here, and knowing that it's a great city. I think it's important um, for the youth coming up to be able to have that platform, because in today's world, with there's all this talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and being able to have equality or equity. You want to have the same opportunities here in Boston as some of the football players have in Texas and in California. And right now, if you kind of look at the top level, college scholarships and the NFL pros, majority of the players are based or are coming from those states. And we want to be able to create some exposure to help, you know, for the youth coming up here that are playing the sport, that have dreams to play in the NFL or to get college scholarships. And we don't want to have to be, second fiddle to anywhere, just because we're here in Boston.
This is awesome. Before I get into Q&As real quick. So I had, there were things that stuck out to me, like obviously the one in Vegas when the kid scores a touchdown, gets pushed, there's a commotion, and I was like, would you look at that? And I thought that the coolest thing was that you guys were like, they can't beat us. Like, relax. Like, don't get into it. They can't beat us. Like, I thought that was cool. But my favorite part was honestly just the kids talking about like Madden. Like, that is like quintessentially kids. It's just like, I know we got practice, something about an itinerary I heard back there, 10 o'clock in the morning, I got to be somewhere. You can't beat me at Madden. But when you look, what are some of your, when you guys actually look back at the project, what were some of your favorite? What are the things like, I can't even remember that happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think those are two good things to just when you kind of look at it, it's like, yeah, they are just still high school kids, you know what I mean? And they have fun playing Madden. But I mean, some of my favorite parts were definitely some of the meetings in those intimate spaces where we had a lot of stuff off camera that happened that we had to be able to discuss. I can say particularly in Vegas, where we had kids who had never been out the city of Boston before, and now they're in Vegas, and the lights, and it's exciting, and they want to go out and they want to have fun and they want to experience this. And we're here on essentially a business trip, but it's an experience as well. So we're trying to keep them grounded. So that was probably one of my kind of favorite parts to look back on. It's like, wow, we were able to share this experience with these kids, and now they'll be able to have that forever. So it was cool.
I'd say my favorite part, it's not necessarily a specific scene, but I think the dynamic between the first episode with the Ski family and then Day Day's father and him on the second episode, I think it kind of really captured exactly what we wanted to show, the dynamic aspect of like families and families of color. And like, we're not, like you said, we're not a monolithic, like we're not just one type of people. And I think seeing the family structures, the situations that they both were like focusing on, that part, and maybe it's just more personal because I'm like editing it and everything. I see all my but that part just really like touched me, being able to like show, and that's just to scratch the surface on the dynamic of different families here in Boston and across the world. But I'd say, yeah, those two like beginning interview parts are my favorite.
Yeah, and even just to touch on that really briefly, when you talk about diversity, diversity is not just white and black. There's diversity between black and black and white. So we have kids that come from different homes in different situations. So it was really cool to see like the kids that come from Boston that might have not the greatest experience or not the safest place, and then you have people in Boston like, I love it here. I've had nothing but a great experience here, and I have a whole family and a mom and a dad, and education is important to us. So I think that was pretty cool that Cheney pointed that out, because that was really symbolistic of kind of the whole picture. Uh-oh, I think we might have lost him again.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there you go.
Yep. This was Matt.
You're frozen again.
Something.
I think they were getting into the Q&A.
How about now?
Back.
Go.
All right, I'm gonna stay really still and hope this works. If this was Madden, I would have logged out by now. Let's tap into some Q&A real quick. See what's happening. This one makes sense. JB, could you enunciate more and speak a bit? I'm trying. Carl and Cheney, can you talk more about the process of developing a project like this? Thank you. That is from Cassie Sodergren. Can you talk more about just the process of developing a project like this?
Sure. So I think to start it off, I think is just really working with the partner and whoever that is, obviously Tenfold Prep in this situation, to make sure that the goal, the end result is like we're keeping that in mind throughout the entire process. And then like how I kind of talked about just being very closely with Carl, talking all the time, getting the real information of the program so that I can go into it informed and knowing what I'm looking for. Kind of developing the interview questions prior and making sure that they're relatable to each family and each athlete. And then, the event part of things, just making sure you're really focusing on the word documentary and you're really documenting every single thing that's going on. That could be them grabbing, food really quick, or them like on the sideline in between games, just really capturing everything and hustling around, making sure you're getting that. And then there's the tedious process of putting that all together in a storyboard during the editing process. That took like about several months, just making sure everything was cohesive and made sense as a story. And then after that was just the marketing aspect of it, making sure that we're reaching the right individuals that should see this and who we want to see this. And I mean, I would say it's a pretty good success. This is a great opportunity for us right now, being on the Globe Juneteenth series, and couldn't be more appreciative. So yeah, that's kind of like how the process goes. I don't know if you had anything else to add, Carl.
Yeah, no, just kind of just what you said. A lot of time in preparation. There's been endless phone calls. We've been up till sometimes 1 a.m, just bouncing ideas back and forth with each other, and then preparing. Obviously none of this was really, I don't want to say like pre-scripted, but we did have an idea in mind of kind of how we wanted to, how we wanted the story to come together. And so I think Cheney kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of how the process works. It's a long process. It's not something that it was just like, hey, we're just gonna just grab a camera and then just throw it up on YouTube. There was a lot of thought and a lot of hard work that went into it.
And Cheney, are you a one-man band too, or are you?
Yeah, I mean, I have my partner. She really helps me with the marketing aspect of it and the business side. And then we had another cameraman out there, Brando. Shout out to Brando, helping us get the second angle. But for everything else, pretty much a one-man band. Obviously, leveraging my relationship with Carl and stuff like that, and getting ideas where I can. But yeah, the whole editing and process was a one-man band.
Cheney's the mastermind, but Brando and Keeks, they're definitely a huge part and a huge help. Very talented individuals who help with the marketing and getting second angles and making the commitment to being there as well. These are long days. We're shooting for like 12 hours without even eating sometimes. We're on the field, we're on buses, you're dealing with kids, and sometimes you just forget to eat. We're at dinner table at the end of the night, like, what happened today? It was a huge commitment from them, so that was great.
And sometimes those eating scenes you gotta film because it's like some funny's happening. So.
All right, I think we might have touched a little bit on this one, but this is from Michaela Litovich. I'm terrible at names. I'm sorry, Michaela. You're awesome. Even though we haven't met, I know we are. Cheney, what were the challenges you faced during the project? It's a pretty straight one.
Yeah. The challenges I kind of mentioned before, but it was really like the responsibility aspect that I slowly gained an understanding of what I had to tell the right story and making sure I make especially I don't think a lot of people in the Black Power community get the same leverage like I mentioned, and the responsibility to make sure everybody looks really, really accurate, but like a good, tasteful way. And the emotional connection too, you're sitting there because you have to cut it down to a sizable content that people want to watch. And, part of the interviews you have to take out but they said something very impactful. They shouted out somebody that you feel like they should have had the opportunity to shout out. But, just the emotional and the responsibility part was really tough for me during the editing process.
And I can just add a little bit onto that as well, kind of coming from the coach side of it to Cheney and asking them to direct this basically for pennies, because I mean, the funding for this type of project is obviously not huge. And Cheney kind of took this on, I don't want to say it's kind of like a charity, but he literally just put his heart and soul into this, and the amount of hours and hard work that he put into this, there was not an amount that we could have, try to come up with funding to try to support that. I mean, we did the best we could in terms of trying to fundraise, but I mean, that was probably a challenge overall for the whole project.
This one's from Mark Celeber. I'm trying my best here, guys. In what months did the trips to Las Vegas? In what month did the trip to Las Vegas occur? And were the young men doing school online during the trips?
Yeah, so the trip in Las Vegas occurred in December, and it was over December break. So they didn't have school. They had a quick break in between. So we got kind of lucky there in terms of timing. When they come back, they had to quarantine, and then they were online school from there.
Actually,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to add to that. In the season 2, there's actually a clip of one of the athletes doing their homework on the plane, which I thought was hilarious. So yeah, second season, they're doing their homework.
This one's from Hannah Jurowitz. Do you, Cheney, work with other causes, organizations, only Boston or other places?
Yeah, I work with a bunch of different organizations. Not only Boston either. I'm open to traveling and stuff like that. Obviously, went to Florida, but no, I work with all different organizations. A lot of fitness, some music stuff, podcasts. I did a recent event video for an organization that supports people struggling with addiction and things like that. So I really just love working with people who want to get their stories out and have a great cause to get it out. And if anybody's looking, definitely willing to work with you guys. So.
And this is just a statement from Carlene Thorpe. She says, "I am so proud of all of you. I look forward to seeing your work on even larger venues. Cheney, your family is watching. We are all proud of you." Friends, there you go. Kathy S wants to know, are you all local? And I'm curious to know why you're so passionate about these young athletes. Your story is fabulous.
What was the question?
Are you all local?
Oh, I see. I guess start off. Yeah, I'm in Dorchester right now, Boston. And I mean, I'm just very passionate. I mean, I grew up in being able to experience how, things aren't fair for everybody, honestly. And it's tough that kids, even as young as high school and obviously younger, have to experience that. So my goal in life is to really do what I can to make that a little bit easier, especially for the Black and brown community, doing whatever I can to feature them and make life somewhat easier. Obviously, it's tough during these times, but that's kind of where my passion is, and when I'm behind the camera, that's kind of what I look for.
Yeah, myself, kind of speaking, I'm local. I'm in right outside of Boston, Massachusetts, in Randolph. My family grew up in Boston. But in terms of the passion, where it comes from, I was a former. I kind of see myself in a lot of these kids, and I was a former athlete who played college football, and I also, I had a dream that a lot of these kids have, and I just want to make sure that, my experience, I can use that to help give back to, maybe better somebody else's experience. And that's kind of where my passion comes from, just helping, mentoring, and it's just something that I love to do.
This one from an anonymous attendee. Where do you see this going in 5 to 10 years?
I don't. Yeah. I mean, from our CTV production side and just our videography side, like I would hope to continue to grow. Be able to tell more stories. Really put like Boston on one of the larger media platform, art platform, because even for sports side, even in arts, I don't think it gets the right recognition it should get. So keep doing bigger and better things, telling as many stories as we can in the community, and hopefully growing, building a team and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think, and obviously the next 5 to 10 years, kind of my expectation is that we're no longer talking about creating the platform, that, there is a platform and we are the platform for, students of all races, sexes, ages, to be able to come here and, advocate for themselves and, be able to accomplish that goal of actually, putting Boston on the map, I guess.
There was another attendee who wanted to know how do kids make their way into the program, and are the scholarships available? And I'm sure that's a Carl question, and I'm sure you get that question a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Every day on social media, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, tons of kids are always reaching out because they want to play. Unfortunately, we can only carry so many at one time, but the program is growing, expanded. We are looking for more coaches and obviously more opportunities. But for a way for a kid to get involved is basically every season, kind of, our website with tenfoldprep.com, or you can check us out on Instagram at Tenfold Sports. Just a direct message to us, an email. We do host tryouts, and we have programming every season, whether it's summer, winter, fall, and you kind of just sign up. And from there, if you want to be able to make the travel squad, there's a tryout associated with that. And then we have developmental squads as well. So we have something for everybody, for kids who are at an elite level, or for kids who are just coming in and just trying to learn the game and just trying to have fun. And then kind of from there, you kind of just gauge where you want to go. But I guess the short answer is just a direct email at tenfoldprep.com or our Instagram at Tenfold Sports.
And I think we got time for another. And if we don't, then I'll just get in trouble. This one's from Gerard Bullock. Says, Chaney, at what point did you realize that videography was your passion? And Carl, what led you to coaching?
Great question. So in high school and stuff like that, I was messing around with the camera doing me and my friends snowboarding and stuff. And then I went to college for video and radio production, where I kind of learned like the studio side of things. But then right after college, I kind of got into workforce, working in nonprofit for a while. But it's funny, actually, the person that connected me with Carl, his name's Turbo, and with Dominic, but we call him Turbo. And I was doing videos for him just for fun on my phone. And like I was having so much fun doing it. I think we were like linking up every weekend or so. And so that kind of like re-sparked my passion for doing video and taking it more serious. And then that's when I developed the organization CTD Productions this past July when COVID, like in the middle of COVID, stuff like that. And I realized there was kind of a need for people telling their stories and creating businesses and uplifting their voices. And so when that happened, that's when I really decided to start up a business, invest in the camera, and go out there and start shooting full time. So.
Yeah, for myself, how did I get into coaching or kind of rise my passion? Again, I was a former, collegiate football player, and I got injured. And during that time when I came home, on my injury, I tore my ACL. It was kind of a depressing time for me. And as soon as I was able to start walking again, it happened to be summertime, and I was watching some of the youth football games in my local town, and I got the invitation to come and coach. And from there, I just kind of fell in love with it. I was coaching the 7, 8-year-old kids who had never even seen a football before, and at the most basic level, and it just kind of grew on me from there, man. I just loved everything about it, and it's been stuck with me ever since.
The one thing about coaching it always makes me chuckle a little bit. I was just talking about this with a friend back home. We were talking about basketball. Was that we were talking about kids and grades, right? And how much that's like a difficult thing. And it's like, man, like coaches have just become teachers. Like players become coaches and coaches are teachers. It's all learning. You know what I mean? So it's just funny how it works, man. I just laugh at that. But how do you like the teaching aspect of it? Because it's more than the game. It's the kids. It's making sure, yeah.
Right, and that was kind of difficult for me at first. When I first came, obviously, I was still really competitive, and I got these 8-year-olds running out there. I'm like, we got to win, and then it took a little while for me to get it. And, midway through the season, I started seeing kids progressing and how much impact it was having on their confidence and the friendships that they began to build and the team camaraderie. And I started like realizing like, whoa, man, this is so much bigger than just wins and losses. You know what I mean? This is life-changing things. These kids are building friendships that are going to last them forever. And I just recently, this past, graduation, had the opportunity to see those kids that I was coaching at 8 years old walk across the stage. And, it was heartwarming, So being a coach, man, you're not a great coach if you're not a great teacher. So you got to be able to offer them something more than just the X's and O's.
And Shani, I'll say this before we got out here. I've heard about people who like won the pandemic. You know what I mean? Like they were locked in, and apparently you're one of them. I never met one. Now I have. Like, it's nice to meet you.
Yeah. No, it was. I have to shout out Michaela Keats. Because actually during the pandemic, both of us lost our jobs and got laid off. And so she was like, listen, we got this. She budgeted everything, enough for us to save up for a camera. And as we got the camera, like she was making sure that we can get the equipment and everything. So big shout out to her. And I definitely feel like we're fortunate, very, very fortunate for how we've been able to make the pandemic work for us.
Awesome. I think I hope that was harmless, quick and painless, man. This was a pleasure. This was an honor. I had a ball. Like, this was a good conversation. I hope the audience enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I certainly enjoyed the series and just talking with you. And happy birthday, everybody out there. I know we can't sing it collectively, but it is a birthday, or it was a birthday. So, no, this was a pleasure. I enjoyed it. Thank you guys.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Y'all gotta take it.